My name is Michael, 72 years old, and I've spent over 40 years in this beautiful Victorian home in Boston. My daughter Amanda and her husband had been plotting behind my back, thinking they could put me in a nursing home and sell my beloved house. What they didn't know was that I overheard everything when she forgot to hang up the phone. I didn't confront them immediately. Instead, I made a plan that would teach them a lesson about respect and family loyalty they'd never forget. Where are you watching from today? Before we dive into how I turned the tables on their scheme, hit that like and subscribe button and join me for a story about how a father's love transformed into an unforgettable lesson about gratitude. After my beloved wife Sarah passed away from cancer 15 years ago, I found myself navigating life as a widower. The silence in our spacious Victorian home was deafening at first. Sarah and I had built our lives together in this house, and every corner held memories of our 50 years of marriage. Despite the loneliness, I managed to create a comfortable routine for myself, finding solace in my woodworking hobby that I pursued in the basement workshop Sarah had helped me set up decades ago. My daughter Amanda is now 48, and her husband Derek is 50. In the years following Sarah's death, I noticed a gradual change in their behavior toward me. Our once close relationship began to fade, replaced by obligatory holiday visits and occasional phone calls that seemed more like checking a task off their list than genuine connection. What became increasingly obvious was that their interest in me peaked whenever they faced financial difficulties. Derek had jumped from one business venture to another over the years, none finding sustainable success. Amanda supported his dreams at every turn, investing their savings into each new idea. About 2 years ago, they opened an upscale boutique that quickly began struggling. I received calls about temporary loans with increasing frequency, which I provided from my retirement savings, wanting to support my only child, despite our growing distance. My health has admittedly seen better days. At 72, I deal with mild arthritis that makes mornings challenging, especially during Boston's cold winters. Occasionally, I forget small things, like where I placed my reading glasses or the name of a neighbor's grandchild. Despite these minor issues, I've remained fiercely independent, determined to age with dignity in the home Sarah and I shared. My daily routine includes morning stretches to loosen my stiff joints, a ritual Sarah had encouraged when the arthritis first appeared. I prepare my own meals, keep the house reasonably tidy, and manage all my finances and appointments without assistance. Once a week, I hire a local college student to help with heavier household tasks, but otherwise I've maintained my self-sufficiency despite my advancing years. This Victorian house represents far more than just property to me. Sarah and I purchased it as young newlyweds, with barely enough for a down payment. It was in terrible condition then, with peeling wallpaper, creaking floors, and outdated everything. The real estate agent had called it a challenging fixer-upper, but we saw its potential immediately. Over the decades, we restored every inch ourselves, learning skills as we went along. I still remember Sarah's delight when we finally completed the ornate moldings in the dining room after 3 years of weekend work. Every corner of this house contains our shared history. The slightly uneven floorboard in the hallway reminds me of our failed attempt at floor leveling that turned into a night of laughter and wine. The kitchen windowsill still bears the height marks tracking Amanda's growth from a toddler to a teenager. Sarah's garden, which I've maintained meticulously since her passing, blooms with the perennials she carefully selected and planted with her own hands. Amanda's childhood in this house was filled with what I thought were happy memories. She learned to ride her bike on our quiet street, celebrated birthdays in the backyard, and completed homework at the kitchen table, while Sarah baked her favorite cookies. The house was filled with laughter and love as we raised her, making sacrifices to ensure she had opportunities we never had. As Amanda entered her teenage years, I noticed her growing interest in material things. While most adolescents go through this phase, Amanda never seemed to outgrow it. Her focus shifted to designer labels, expensive electronics, and impressing her friends. Sarah and I discussed our concerns about her values, but we hoped maturity would eventually bring perspective. After college, Amanda married Derek, who shared her appreciation for status and appearances. Their wedding was lavish beyond their means, and they purchased a home in an exclusive neighborhood they could barely afford. Over the years, their financial decisions continued to prioritize image over stability, a pattern that troubled me deeply, but that Sarah urged me to accept as their choice. While Amanda and Derek chased an expensive lifestyle, I focused on ensuring my financial security. My career as an architect had provided a comfortable living, and Sarah and I had always been careful savers. Our house, purchased for $95,000 in 1980, had appreciated significantly in value to over $1 million, thanks to both our renovations and Boston's booming real estate market. My retirement savings combined with the house equity meant I had planned carefully for my own elder care needs. I had researched various options from aging in place with hired help to upscale retirement communities. I had no intention of becoming a burden to Amanda, nor did I expect her to become my caregiver. What I did expect, however, was basic respect and honesty about my future. About 6 months ago, I noticed a shift in Amanda and Derek's behavior. Their visits became more frequent, often unannounced. They brought small gifts and groceries offered to help around the house, and seemed unusually interested in my daily activities. Initially, I was touched by what I interpreted as renewed closeness, perhaps a maturing recognition of family importance. Derek began suggesting home modifications. For my safety, pointing out loose rugs and recommending grab bars in the bathroom. Amanda started asking detailed questions about my medication schedule and whether I ever felt confused. Their concern seemed excessive, given my relatively minor health issues, but I appreciated what I thought was thoughtfulness. Then came the day that changed everything. Amanda had called to check in, and we chatted for about 15 minutes about routine matters. At the end of our conversation, I heard her say goodbye, and what sounded like her placing the phone down. But she hadn't actually disconnected the call. What followed was a conversation between her and Derek that froze my blood. "Dad seemed more confused today," she said, her voice now carrying a completely different tone than the warm one she'd just been using with me. "Did you notice how long it took him to remember your brother's name?" "Perfect," Derek responded. "The more documentation we have of his cognitive decline, the easier this will be. Did you take photos of that pile of mail in the hallway?" "Yes, and I organized his medication into that pill box in a way that looks like he's been missing doses," Amanda replied. "The social worker will definitely notice that when we get her in for an evaluation." Their conversation continued, becoming increasingly disturbing. "He has to go to a nursing home. We can't wait any longer," Amanda declared firmly. "The housing market is hot right now, and we need to sell before interest rates rise again." "I've already spoken to 3 agents," Derek added eagerly. "They all say we could get at least $1.2 million for the property, especially with that corner lot. After the nursing home costs, we'd still clear a nice profit to split." They continued discussing their plans in detail, including which nursing facilities would eat up the least of their inheritance, and how they would explain to family friends that the decision was for my own good. They even laughed about which of my possessions they would keep or sell. I sat in stunned silence, the phone still pressed to my ear, as my own daughter discussed discarding me like an inconvenient burden. The pain that shot through me was unlike anything I'd felt since Sarah's death. This betrayal from the child we had loved and raised with such devotion cut deeper than I could have imagined possible. My first instinct was to interrupt their conversation, to let them know I'd heard every word. But something stopped me. Perhaps it was shock, or maybe an instinctive recognition that revealing my knowledge immediately would only cause them to become more secretive about their plans. Instead, I quietly hung up the phone and sat in my armchair for hours, trying to process what I'd heard. The following weekend, Amanda and Derek invited me to dinner at their home. I accepted, curious to see how they would behave. The evening was surreal. They were attentive and solicitous, asking about my health with concerned expressions that now seemed transparently fake. Derek mentioned a friend's father who had found such peace in an assisted living community. Amanda casually brought up how managing a large house must be becoming difficult for me. I played along deliberately, fumbling with my fork at one point and pretending to forget the name of my next-door neighbor of 20 years. Their exchanged glances of validation made my stomach turn. When Amanda suggested I stay the night because I seemed tired, I declined, firmly insisting I was perfectly capable of driving myself home. After that dinner, I began my own quiet investigation. Using the computer skills I'd developed during my later working years, I researched Amanda and Derek's financial situation. It wasn't difficult to discover they were in serious trouble. Their boutique was consistently losing money, and online county records showed they had received a mortgage foreclosure notice on their home 3 months earlier. They had also taken out multiple high-interest loans in the past year. Their scheme now made perfect sense. They weren't just being callous. They were desperate for money. My house and savings represented a solution to their financial problems, if only they could gain control of my assets. The nursing home wasn't about my care needs. It was about accessing my property. The nights following this discovery were among the most difficult of my life. I lay awake remembering Amanda as a child, her small hand in mine, as we walked through the park, her excitement when I built her first bookcase, her tears when I comforted her through her first heartbreak. Sarah and I had poured our lives into raising her with values of honesty, compassion, and integrity. Where had we gone wrong? Had our provision for her material needs somehow fostered this sense of entitlement to everything we had worked for? As my initial shock and hurt began to subside, it was gradually replaced by a steely resolve. I would not allow myself to be discarded and manipulated. I might be aging, but I was far from helpless. It was time to take action to protect myself, and in a way to teach my daughter the lesson about respect and consequences that she apparently still needed to learn. The morning after I made my decision, I called Thomas Richardson, my attorney and friend of 30 years. His law office had handled both my business and personal legal matters since my architectural firm first took off. More importantly, he was one of the few people who had known both Sarah and me throughout our marriage and who understood the values we shared. "Michael, this is unconscionable," Thomas said, after I recounted what I had overheard. His voice contained the perfect blend of professional distance and personal outrage that I needed. "First, let me assure you that they cannot force you into any facility against your will as long as you're mentally competent." We spent 2 hours discussing my options. Thomas confirmed that the house was solely in my name and that Amanda had no legal claim to it whatsoever. He suggested documenting my mental competence immediately and updating my will to protect my assets from potential manipulation. What if I decided to sell the house myself? I asked, the plan beginning to take shape in my mind. "That's entirely your right," Thomas responded. "But are you sure you want to leave the home you and Sarah built together?" It was a fair question that prompted deep reflection. While the house contained precious memories, I realized it had also become something of a museum to my past life. Perhaps moving forward meant literally moving elsewhere. The more I considered it, the more the idea appealed to me as both a practical solution and a symbolic fresh start. My next appointment was with Dr. Caroline Lewis, my physician of 15 years. I requested a thorough cognitive assessment and physical examination, explaining my concerns about Amanda's behavior. "Michael, I see nothing indicating you need assistance with daily living," Dr. Lewis stated firmly after completing her evaluation. "Your mild arthritis and occasional forgetfulness are absolutely normal for your age and nowhere near the threshold for requiring supervised care." She provided detailed documentation of her findings, which I immediately forwarded to Thomas for safekeeping. With my competence officially established, I contacted Patricia Morrison, a real estate agent recommended by Thomas, who specialized in high-value properties. Unlike the agents Derek had consulted, Patricia had no connection to my family and would maintain absolute confidentiality. "This Victorian is a gem," Patricia exclaimed during her initial walkthrough. "The original details you've preserved while updating the essentials make this extremely marketable." She suggested listing at $1.2 million, but warned that the fastest sale would likely come from developers interested in the property's location rather than its historical features. "How quickly could it sell?" I asked, explaining that timing was essential to my plan. "To the right buyer with cash ready, we could close in as little as a week," she replied. While Patricia began quietly marketing the property, I started searching for my new home. I found a modern single-level condominium in a well-established community about 30 minutes from my current neighborhood. The building included a community workshop where I could continue my woodworking, a garden area where I could plant some of Sarah's perennials, and, best of all, neighbors my age, who valued their independence just as much as I valued mine. Within days, Patricia called with news of an offer. A development company had bid $850,000 in cash with a 5-day closing period. While significantly below the asking price, the all-cash offer and rapid closing timeline perfectly suited my needs. After brief negotiation, we settled at $900,000 with a 7-day closing contingent on my finding suitable alternative housing. I made an offer on the condominium that same day, using a portion of my savings for the down payment to ensure a quick cash transaction. By the end of the week, both deals were proceeding simultaneously through the closing process. Throughout this whirlwind of activity, I was methodically updating my legal protections as well. Thomas helped me create a living trust that would safeguard my assets while giving me full control during my lifetime. We updated my will explicitly, noting Amanda's nursing home plans and including recorded evidence of the overheard phone conversation as explanation for the changes to my estate plan. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Thomas asked as we finalized the documents. "There's still time to confront them directly instead." "I'm certain," I replied. "They made their choice when they decided to deceive me. Now I'm making mine." My emotional journey through these practical preparations was complicated. Some moments I felt empowered and righteous. Others brought waves of grief for the relationship I had thought I had with my daughter. I found myself talking to Sarah's photograph late at night, asking if we had somehow failed as parents to instill proper values, wondering if she would approve of my plan. I imagined her practical nature and her fierce protection of those she loved. "You deserve dignity and respect," I could almost hear her say. Sometimes the kindest love is the one that teaches necessary lessons. With each passing day, my conviction strengthened. This wasn't just about protecting myself from Amanda and Derek's scheme. It was about reclaiming my agency, refusing to be viewed as a helpless elder, and perhaps offering my daughter one final parental lesson about consequences and respect. As the closing dates approached, I found an unexpected sense of freedom emerging. The burden of maintaining the large Victorian was lifting. The grief I had preserved in keeping everything exactly as Sarah had left it was giving way to the possibility of honoring her memory while embracing a new chapter. I was 72, not 92. There was still life to be lived on my own terms. The opportunity to implement my plan arrived sooner than expected. 3 weeks after I'd overheard their conversation, Amanda called to inform me that she and Derek needed to take an urgent business trip to Chicago regarding their boutique. They would be gone for 4 days and wanted to check in on me before leaving. "We're a little concerned about leaving you alone for so long," Amanda said, her voice dripping with false concern. "Maybe we should ask the neighbor to stop by. I'll be perfectly fine," I assured her, noting how she had never worried about my being alone during their previous trips. "You two focus on your business matters." They insisted on visiting the evening before their departure. I welcomed them with the same warmth I'd always shown, watching with growing certainty that my plan was justified as they moved through my house with calculating eyes. Derek casually measured the living room windows while pretending to admire the view. Amanda disappeared upstairs for nearly 20 minutes later, claiming she had been using the bathroom. "We'll call to check on you every day," Amanda promised as they prepared to leave. "Just rest, and don't worry about anything while we're gone." "Don't rush back on my account," I replied, the double meaning of my words lost on them. "Take all the time you need to sort out your business." The moment their car pulled away, I sprang into action. I called Patricia and Thomas, confirming that everything was ready for the accelerated timeline. The developer was eager to close immediately, and my condominium purchase had been approved. All necessary documents were prepared and awaiting signatures. The next morning, I signed the closing papers for both properties in Thomas's office. By noon, I was officially no longer the owner of the Victorian home where I'd spent 4 decades of my life. By 3 o'clock, I had the keys to my new condominium. The speed of modern real estate transactions worked perfectly in my favor. I hired a moving company that specialized in senior relocations, explaining my need for discretion and efficiency. Their team arrived within hours of my call, quickly and carefully packing my most treasured possessions. I had already prepared a detailed inventory of what to take and what to leave behind. Walking through each room, I made deliberate choices. From the master bedroom, I took Sarah's jewelry box, our wedding album, and the quilt her mother had made us. I left the heavy antique furniture that Amanda had always admired, but that would not fit in my new modern space. In my study, I collected my architectural awards, family photographs, and the first blueprint I'd ever drawn. I left behind the expensive desk that Derek had often commented on. From the kitchen, I took Sarah's handwritten recipe book and the cast-iron skillet that had served 3 generations of meals. I left the premium appliances that had been recently updated. The most difficult decisions came in sorting through Sarah's garden. I carefully dug up divisions of her favorite perennials, the roses I had given her on our anniversaries, and the Japanese maple we had planted on our 25th wedding anniversary. These living memories would establish a connection between my past and future homes. Throughout this process, I experienced a surprising sense of liberation. Each item I chose to bring represented what truly mattered from my life with Sarah. The things I left behind were just things their emotional weight lifted as I released them. Before leaving for the final time, I wrote a letter to Amanda and Derek. I wanted it to be honest without being vindictive, clear without being cruel. After several drafts, I settled on a message that laid bare their betrayal, while offering a path forward, however difficult. The letter read, "Amanda and Derek. By the time you read this, I will be settled in my new home. Yes, I sold the house just as you planned to do after sending me to a nursing home. I heard every word of your conversation when Amanda forgot to hang up the phone 3 weeks ago. I heard your discussions about my cognitive decline, your plans to sell my home, and your calculations about which nursing facility would eat up the least of what you consider your inheritance. What you failed to consider is that I am still competent, independent, and capable of making my own decisions as documented by my physician. The attached medical and legal papers confirm this fact. The house sold for $900,000. After purchasing my new home, I have placed the remaining funds in a trust for my actual care needs when the time comes. This trust is structured to prevent any misuse of these resources. I raised you to understand that respect and honesty form the foundation of family relationships. Your actions have broken that foundation, but not irreparably if you choose to rebuild it properly. I am not angry. I am disappointed and hurt. When you're ready to speak honestly, you'll find my new address with Thomas. Dad. I placed the letter in an envelope along with copies of my medical evaluation and legal documents and left it on the entryway table where they couldn't miss it. Then I took one last look around the empty house, silently saying goodbye to the home where Sarah and I had built our life together. As I turned the key in the lock for the final time, I felt a profound mixture of sadness and strength. The security camera I had installed would capture their return, but I didn't need to witness it to know what would happen. They would arrive celebrating what they thought was the imminent acquisition of my home, only to discover that the tables had been completely turned. Within hours, I was arranging my belongings in my new condominium, introducing myself to neighbors who welcomed me warmly, and planting Sarah's perennials in the community garden space that had been assigned to me. A new chapter had begun. Amanda's first call came at 8:32 p.m. on the day of their return, exactly 47 minutes. After they would have found the house key still worked in a lock that no longer belonged to them. I let it go to voicemail, not yet ready for the confrontation. The message she left was a chaotic blend of shock, outrage, and panic. Dad, what have you done? Call me back immediately. You can't just sell the house without talking to us. This isn't legal. Derek is calling our lawyer right now. 6 more calls followed over the next 2 hours, each message escalating in tone. By the final call, Amanda was alternating between threats and pleading, her voice cracking with the realization that their plan had not only failed, but completely backfired. I finally answered her call the following morning. Dad, thank God, where are you? What's going on? We need to fix this situation immediately, she blurted before I could even speak. I'm in my new home, I replied calmly. I assume you found my letter. This is insane. You've been manipulated by someone. Was it that snake Thomas? He's always been jealous of our family? She sputtered. Amanda, I said firmly, cutting through her accusations. I heard everything you said on the phone. Every word about putting me in a nursing home, selling the house, and splitting what you called your inheritance. The line went silent for several seconds. When she spoke again, her voice had changed completely. Dad, you misunderstood. We were talking about contingency planning for the future for when you might need care. We only want what's best for you. I think we need to have this conversation in person, I responded. Tomorrow at noon at Riverside Cafe. It's a public place where we can talk privately. I chose a restaurant halfway between our homes, deliberately selecting neutral territory. Fine, she agreed tersely. Derek and I will be there, and Dad bring the paperwork from the sale. We need to see exactly what happened. The following day, I arrived at the restaurant 20 minutes early, selecting a corner table that offered privacy without isolation. I had brought copies of all relevant documents organized in a folder. Thomas had offered to accompany me, but I declined. This was a family matter I needed to handle myself. Amanda and Derek arrived precisely at noon, both dressed in business attire, as if attending a negotiation rather than a family meeting. Amanda's eyes were rimmed red from either anger or crying, while Derek maintained a tightly controlled expression. They sat down without the usual pretense of affection. Let's cut to the chase, Derek began immediately. What you've done is elder financial abuse, but in reverse. Someone has clearly manipulated you into making irrational decisions. I'm going to stop you right there, I replied, my voice calm but firm. Before we continue, I want you both to understand that I have recordings of your conversations about putting me in a nursing home to sell my house. I have documentation from my doctor confirming my competence, and I have witnesses to your behavior over the past months as you built your case for my supposed decline. I opened the folder and placed copies of the medical evaluation on the table. As you can see, I am perfectly capable of independent living and financial decision-making. Dr. Lewis has known me for 15 years and found no cognitive issues whatsoever. Derek started to speak, but Amanda placed a hand on his arm, stopping him. Her expression had shifted from indignation to calculation. "Dad, clearly there's been a terrible misunderstanding," she said, her voice softening dramatically. "We were researching options because we worry about you being alone in that big house. The conversation you overheard was taken completely out of context. Was I also taking it out of context when you discussed which nursing home would eat up the least of your inheritance, or when you talked about the profit you'd split after selling my property? Or perhaps when you mentioned the photos you were taking of mail I'd supposedly neglected, and medication you'd deliberately disorganized to create evidence?" Their shocked expressions confirmed what I already knew. They hadn't imagined I'd heard the entire conversation in such detail. Amanda's face flushed red, while Derek's complexion went pale. "You don't understand." Derek attempted, his voice losing its confident edge. "We're in financial trouble. The boutique is failing and we're behind on our mortgage. We were desperate." "So your solution was to discard me in a nursing facility against my will and take my home?" I asked, looking directly at Amanda. "The home your mother and I built together, where we raised you." Amanda's eyes filled with tears, but I couldn't tell if they were from genuine remorse or frustration at being caught. "We would have taken care of you," she insisted. "By finding the cheapest facility possible to maximize your profit," I countered. For the next hour, the conversation cycled through their attempts at justification. My presentation of evidence, their anger threats of legal action, and finally, a grudging recognition that they had no legal grounds to challenge my decisions. "So that's it. You've cut us off completely," Amanda finally asked, her voice small and defeated. "I've protected myself from your scheme," I corrected. "What happens next depends entirely on you. If you want any relationship with me going forward, it will be built on honesty and respect, not manipulation and greed." I laid out my conditions clearly. No more lies, no attempts to interfere with my living situation or finances, and a recognition that I remained competent to make my own decisions. Any future financial support would be at my sole discretion, and based on transparent need, not entitled demands. "And what about our financial situation?" Derek asked bluntly. "We were counting on that money." "Money that wasn't yours to count on," I reminded him. "You'll need to solve your financial problems honestly, just like everyone else does." Amanda's expression hardened at this. "So you're punishing us because we wanted to make sure you were taken care of?" "No," I replied, gathering my documents and preparing to leave. "I'm ensuring I'll be properly taken care of, by my own choices, not yours. There's a significant difference." And as I stood to leave, Amanda made one last attempt. "Dad, please, we're still family." "Yes, we are," I acknowledged. "And family should treat each other with respect and honesty. When you're ready to do that, you know how to reach me." I walked out of the restaurant feeling both drained and resolute. The confrontation had gone largely as I expected. Their initial shock and anger had given way to unsuccessful manipulation, followed by the dawning reality that their plans had not only failed, but resulted in consequences they never anticipated. In the weeks following our confrontation at the restaurant, I experienced a strange mixture of grief and liberation. I grieved not just for the relationship I had lost with my daughter, but for the illusion I had maintained about what that relationship had been. The reality that Amanda viewed me primarily as a financial resource rather than a father was painful to accept. Yet alongside this grief ran a powerful current of freedom. My new condominium proved to be exactly what I needed at this stage of life. The single-level layout eliminated the stairs that had sometimes troubled my arthritic knees. The modern kitchen was efficient and easy to maintain. Best of all, the community offered both privacy and connection, allowing me to choose when to socialize and when to enjoy solitude. Amanda and Derek's situation deteriorated rapidly after our meeting. Through mutual friends, I learned they had been forced to list their house for sale, unable to catch up on their mortgage payments. Their boutique closed within a month, leaving them with additional business debts. They made several attempts to contact other family members and friends to pressure me, portraying themselves as concerned children, trying to help a stubborn, possibly confused father. Their efforts backfired spectacularly when I shared the recording of their nursing home conversation with my nephew, John, Amanda's cousin. John had always been close to our family, visiting regularly after Sarah's passing and genuinely checking on my well-being. His outrage on my behalf led him to counter their narrative within our extended family circle, ensuring the truth was known. "Uncle Michael, I can't believe Amanda would do this," John said during one of his frequent visits to my new home. "Aunt Sarah would be heartbroken." "Your aunt always believed people could learn and change," I replied. "I'm trying to hold on to that belief too." As my new life took shape, I found myself reconnecting with old passions and discovering new ones. The community workshop became my second home, where I began teaching woodworking basics to interested neighbors. My architectural background made me a natural consultant for others planning renovations or considering downsizing. I also reconnected with Margaret, Sarah's sister, who had distanced herself from Amanda years earlier due to what she described as concerning materialism. Margaret lived just an hour away and began visiting regularly, bringing her warmth and humor, along with Sarah's favorite recipes that she still prepared exactly as her sister had taught her. "Sarah would be proud of you for standing up for yourself," Margaret told me over coffee one afternoon. "She always said you were too generous for your own good sometimes." Beyond family, I began building what I came to think of as my chosen family among my new neighbors. There was Robert, a retired English professor who shared my love of historical architecture. Elena, a widow who maintained a vibrant container garden and generously shared her knowledge as I transplanted Sarah's perennials. And the Jenkins couple, who organized weekly card games that quickly became the highlight of my social calendar. Throughout this period of adjustment and growth, Amanda's approach to the situation evolved in stages. Her initial response was anger and denial, manifested in accusatory text messages and attempted interventions through family members. When these tactics failed, she shifted to portray herself as the victim, claiming I had abandoned her during their financial crisis out of misplaced spite. "Dad refuses to help us, even though he's sitting on nearly $1 million, she reportedly told family members. "He'd rather see us lose everything than support his own daughter." This narrative gained little traction among those who knew the full story. Gradually, as the reality of their situation set in, Amanda's communications became less frequent and more subdued. 3 months after our confrontation, she sent an email that, while stopping short of a full apology, acknowledged that things could have been handled better on both sides. I viewed this as a small but significant step toward potential reconciliation. I responded with a brief but warm message, reiterating that I remained open to rebuilding our relationship on more honest terms whenever she felt ready. Throughout this period, I struggled with my own feelings about forgiveness. Part of me wanted to immediately welcome Amanda back into my life, to repair our relationship regardless of her actions. The father in me still saw glimpses of the little girl who had once looked up to me with complete trust and love. Yet another part recognized that true reconciliation required accountability and change, not just convenient forgetting. I began speaking with a therapist, Dr. Winters, who specialized in family relationships among older adults. Our sessions helped me navigate the complex emotions of parenting an adult child who had betrayed my trust so fundamentally. Forgiveness doesn't mean allowing someone to hurt you again. Dr. Winters reminded me during one particularly difficult session. Healthy boundaries are an essential part of healthy relationships at any age. This perspective helped me find a balanced approach. I could maintain an open heart toward Amanda while still protecting myself from further manipulation. I could hope for reconciliation while accepting that it might never come in the form I wished for. Most importantly, I could find peace within myself, regardless of her choices going forward. As 6 months passed in my new home, I realized I had created a life that was not merely adequate, but genuinely fulfilling. The painful catalyst that had prompted this change had ultimately led me to a place of greater authenticity and joy than I had experienced in the years since Sarah's passing. I was no longer simply existing in a museum of memories, but actively creating new ones while honoring the past. On a crisp autumn morning, almost exactly 6 months after I had moved into my condominium, I received an unexpected delivery. It was a thick envelope addressed in Amanda's handwriting, sent via certified mail, requiring a signature. The formal delivery method suggested its importance, and I felt a mixture of curiosity and apprehension as I carried it to my favorite reading chair by the window. Inside, I found a 12-page handwritten letter. The carefully formed letters showed signs of multiple drafts and revisions, with occasional ink blots where tears might have fallen. It began simply, "Dear Dad, I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need to tell you how sorry I truly am." What followed was perhaps the most honest communication I had received from my daughter in decades. Amanda detailed the gradual erosion of values that had led to their desperate scheme, beginning with small financial decisions, prioritizing appearance over substance, escalating to risky business ventures, and culminating in their plan to use me as a solution to their self-created problems. "I've spent months trying to justify what we planned to do," she wrote. "I told myself we would have found a nice facility that you would have adjusted, that we would have visited often. But the truth is, we were willing to sacrifice your happiness and independence for our financial convenience. When I finally forced myself to imagine being in your position, I felt physically ill with shame." She explained that after their house sold at a significant loss, they had moved to a small apartment and begun the painful process of rebuilding their finances honestly. Derek had taken a corporate job he had previously considered beneath him, while Amanda had started working as an administrative assistant at a local community college. "For the first time in our marriage, we're living within our actual means," she wrote. "It's humbling and often uncomfortable, but also strangely liberating. We don't have to maintain appearances anymore. We're just focusing on paying our debts and rebuilding our integrity." The letter contained no requests for money or assistance, just an expression of genuine remorse and a tentative question about whether someday there might be a path toward rebuilding our relationship. She closed with a simple statement that brought tears to my eyes. "I lost sight of what truly matters, but losing your respect has helped me find it again." After reading the letter several times, I set it aside to process my thoughts before responding. Unlike her previous communications, this one seemed to come from a place of genuine reflection rather than strategic manipulation. The absence of excuses and the concrete steps she described taking to change their situation suggested this might represent a true turning point. The next day, I wrote back with a brief but warm letter of my own. Dear Amanda, your letter meant more to me than I can adequately express. The honesty and self-reflection it contains are the foundation upon which we might begin to rebuild trust. I would welcome the opportunity to meet for coffee next Saturday at 10 a.m. at the Garden Cafe near my condominium, if that works for your schedule. Just you, not Derek, for this first conversation. We can take small steps forward together. With love, Dad. Our meeting that Saturday was awkward at first, with Amanda clearly nervous and uncertain. She looked different than I remembered, dressed simply without the designer labels. She had once prioritized her hair. Pulled back naturally rather than professionally styled. The change suited her, reminding me of the more authentic young woman she had been before material concerns began to overshadow her character. "Thank you for meeting me," she began, her hands wrapped tightly around her coffee mug. "I wasn't sure you would. Your letter showed me you're really thinking about things differently," I replied. "That's all I've ever wanted, for you to find your way back to the values your mother and I tried to teach you." Our conversation that morning was the first of many over the following months. We established a routine of Saturday coffee meetings, gradually rebuilding our relationship one honest exchange at a time. Amanda shared the challenges and insights of their financial reconstruction, while I told her about my new friends and activities. We reminisced about Sarah and acknowledged the ways we had both struggled after her death. 3 months into these meetings, Amanda asked if she could bring Derek to join us. He had been undertaking his own journey of reflection, she explained, and wanted the opportunity to apologize in person. I agreed, though, with some reservation. When Derek joined us the following Saturday, I barely recognized the humbled man before me. Gone was the slick, overconfident persona he had cultivated for years, replaced by someone visibly working to be more authentic. "Michael, I've rehearsed this apology 100 times, but nothing sounds adequate," he began. "What we planned to do was unforgivable. I can only say that I'm committed to being a better person, a better son-in-law than I was before." These words could have been empty, but the changed circumstances of their lives lent them credibility. They had maintained their modest apartment, even as their financial situation gradually improved. Derek spoke of the satisfaction he found in his corporate job stability and the relief of no longer chasing unsustainable business ventures. Amanda shared that she had begun taking accounting classes at the community college where she worked, developing practical skills rather than focusing on status. As the 1-year anniversary of my move approached, I decided it was time for a modest family gathering at my condominium. I invited Amanda and Derek's nephew John and his wife Sarah's sister Margaret, and a couple of my closest new friends from the community. It would be the first time all these important people in my life would come together, a symbolic integration of my past and present. The evening wasn't without its awkward moments. John was initially cool toward Amanda, and Margaret watched Derek with obvious suspicion. Yet as the night progressed, the genuine changes in Amanda and Derek's attitudes became apparent to everyone. By dessert, the atmosphere had warmed considerably, with even Margaret engaging Derek in a surprisingly animated conversation about community college education. After everyone had gone home, I sat in my comfortable living room, surrounded by the carefully chosen keepsakes from my life with Sarah, alongside the new belongings that represented my current chapter. On my mantel stood a photograph taken that evening of our small gathering. All of us smiling with varying degrees of ease, but undeniably connected. I thought about the unexpected journey of the past year, how a devastating betrayal had ultimately led to positive transformations for everyone involved. Amanda and Derek were building a more authentic life based on honesty rather than appearances. I had created a new home that better suited my current needs while honoring my past. Most importantly, we were establishing a family relationship built on mutual respect rather than obligation or exploitation. There was still work to be done, trust to be rebuilt, and boundaries to be maintained. Our relationship would never be the same as it once was, nor should it be. But it had the potential to be something new and possibly better, precisely because it now rested on a foundation of truth. As I prepared for bed that night, I spoke aloud to Sarah, as I often did in private moments. "You always said people could surprise you if you gave them the chance," I told her photograph. "I think you'd be proud of Amanda now. She's finding her way back to the person you always hoped she'd be." I fell asleep that night with a profound sense of peace, grateful for the wisdom that comes from life's most difficult lessons, and the strength to act on that wisdom no matter one's age. Looking back over this past year, I can honestly say that selling my house was one of the best decisions I've ever made, though I never could have imagined it happening under such circumstances. When I discovered my daughter and son-in-law's plan to put me in a nursing home and sell my beloved Victorian home, I felt betrayed beyond words. But that painful moment became the catalyst for a journey that has ultimately led to healing and wisdom I never expected to find in my 70s. The early days after moving to my condominium were difficult. Despite the comfortable surroundings and friendly neighbors, I experienced waves of grief, not just for my lost home, but for the relationship with Amanda I thought I had. On particularly challenging days, I would sit in my new garden space among Sarah's transplanted perennials, seeking comfort from memories of her steady presence and practical wisdom. "What would you think of all this, Sarah?" I would ask the blooming roses we had nurtured together for decades. Sometimes, in the gentle breeze that rustled their petals, I could almost hear her. No-nonsense response. "You did what needed doing, Michael. Now keep living." And gradually, that's exactly what I did. With each passing week, I found myself healing from the initial trauma of Amanda's betrayal. The hurt remained, but its sharp edges softened as I built a fulfilling new life, surrounded by people who valued me for myself, not my assets, or what I could provide for them. The most profound healing began surprisingly when Amanda sent that heartfelt letter of apology 6 months after our confrontation. Her willingness to take full responsibility for her actions without excuses opened a door I had feared might remain forever closed. Our carefully rebuilt relationship now contained something precious that was missing before complete honesty about who we are and what we expect from each other. Amanda and Derek have maintained the positive changes in their lives, continuing to live modestly even as their financial situation has slowly improved. Derek's corporate job recently included a promotion, while Amanda has discovered a genuine talent for accounting that has led to a part-time position in the community college's finance department while she completes her certification. "It turns out I'm good with numbers when I use them for budgeting rather than shopping," she joked during a recent visit. The self-awareness in her humor reflected how far she's come in understanding the values that truly matter. Last month, they invited me to dinner at their apartment, a simple but comfortable space that bears no resemblance to the status-conscious home they once stretched beyond their means to maintain. Over a home-cooked meal, they shared their 5-year plan for debt repayment and modest savings goals. "We'll never be rich," Derek acknowledged, "but we'll be secure and honest. That's worth more than I ever understood before." My relationship with Amanda will never return to what it was, and that's actually for the best. The father-daughter dynamic we had before was built partly on illusion. My willingness to overlook her materialistic values while she viewed me as a safety net rather than a person deserving respect. What we're building now is more authentic a relationship between adults who see each other clearly and choose to connect anyway. My own life has blossomed in unexpected ways. The woodworking classes I began teaching in the community workshop have expanded to a weekly gathering that combines crafting with conversation. I've found purpose in helping others create meaningful objects with their hands while building connections through shared stories. Some of my architectural knowledge has found new expression in a volunteer position with a local historical preservation society. Twice monthly, I lead walking tours of Boston's historic neighborhoods, sharing the stories behind the buildings that have witnessed centuries of human experience. The passion I see in participants' eyes when they truly notice architectural details for the first time brings me a satisfaction that rivals what I felt during my professional career. Perhaps most surprising has been my friendship with Elena from the community garden. What began as conversations about plant care has deepened into a meaningful connection between two people who understand the particular challenges and joys of building a life after losing a beloved spouse. While Sarah remains irreplaceable in my heart, Elena's companionship has brought unexpected warmth to my days. The lessons from this journey have been profound. I've learned that dignity in aging requires self-advocacy and clear boundaries. That family relationships must be based on mutual respect, not obligation or exploitation. That it's never too late to begin again, to create a life that reflects one's true values rather than others' expectations. Most importantly, I've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or allowing harmful patterns to continue. True forgiveness comes with accountability and changed behavior. It creates the possibility of something new and potentially better than what was lost. If you're facing a situation where someone you love sees you as a resource rather than a person, please remember that you deserve respect at every age. Standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary not just for your well-being, but sometimes for theirs as well. The boundaries I established ultimately helped Amanda and Derek find a more authentic path than the one they were on. Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect yourself from someone you love? How did you balance compassion with self-respect? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences that remind us it's never too late to stand up for yourself and create the life you deserve. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the most loving thing we can do for others is to refuse to participate in their harmful plans, even when it breaks our hearts to do so.